Hello everyone and welcome. Airservices Australia is seeking your feedback on a series of proposed flight path changes across the wider Brisbane region that form part of the Noise Action Plan for Brisbane. These proposals have been developed with support from Trax International, a leading global provider of professional and technical flight path design services. I'm John Henderson from Trax, and it's my voice and laser pointer that will guide you through this presentation. This presentation is for an audience that is familiar with the Noise Action Plan for Brisbane. The preferred options presented in Package 3 have been developed in response to community feedback received during early engagement sessions in 2024. They aim to reduce the frequency and concentration of flights over some of the most heavily affected areas and, in some cases, to share noise impacts more evenly across communities. These proposals have been shaped by what we heard from previous rounds of engagement, a strong call for a fairer distribution of aircraft noise. Many residents asked us to reduce the burden on areas experiencing both arrivals and departures, especially those affected during both the day and night. In August and September 2024, we shared several initial concepts to demonstrate how this might be achieved. Communities provided detailed feedback, which has directly influenced the preferred options, and combined with industry feedback and further technical analysis, we have developed a number of preferred flight path options. These options are designed to reduce the impact of aircraft operations on some of Brisbane's most affected suburbs. There is also one new option specifically for departures overland during the night period. A preferred option is not a final decision. These are refined proposals shaped by feedback and technical review. After this Phase 6 engagement, all community input will be assessed before any decisions are made about final designs for implementation. We've recorded this webinar so you can pause, replay and take your time to fully understand what's being proposed. That way your feedback can be as informed and specific as possible, helping to guide Airservices' final decisions. In this phase of engagement, we're presenting all the proposed changes together so you can see the full picture. Rather than looking at individual changes in isolation, we want to show how all the elements work as a whole. This makes it easier to understand the broader impact and how different parts of Brisbane may be affected. To help navigate the information, the proposed changes have been grouped into 4 key areas. Firstly, changes affecting the north and west of Brisbane. Second, changes that affect the south and east. Third, changes that support independent parallel runway operations. Fourth and finally, one new option being considered specifically for nighttime operations. We've also developed a summary document, the Phase 6 Engagement Overview, which gives you a clear, at-a-glance guide to all the proposed changes. It's a great starting point before diving into the details of each option. Alongside this presentation, we've provided a range of tools and resources to help you explore the proposed changes in more detail. On the Noise Action Plan for Brisbane website, that's engage.airservicesaustralia.com/NAP4B, you'll find 7 fact sheets that summarise the proposals and outline the potential benefits and impacts of each change, additional explainer videos to help visualise key features of the proposals, and our baseline model, which gives you access to interactive maps where you can look up specific addresses, zoom in and compare current and proposed flight paths, including detailed modelled noise contours. We've also put together answers to frequently asked questions. These will be regularly updated throughout the engagement period based on the questions we receive from the community, so please keep the questions coming. We're hosting 10 in-person community events across the Greater Brisbane area. If you've already registered, we look forward to meeting you there and hearing your thoughts in person. If you haven't booked into one yet, just head to engage.airservicesaustralia.com/NAP4B to view the schedule and secure your spot for a 20-minute session with one of our community engagement team and flight path design specialists. And if you can't make it in person, we have a limited number of spots available to attend a 20-minute meeting with us online. This presentation is designed to walk you through our proposals step by step, providing a clear narrative to support informed community feedback. We encourage you to share your views by completing the survey at engage.airservicesaustralia.com/NAP4B. Your feedback is essential in helping guide Airservices decision making, and if you have any questions, you can email us directly at communityengagement@airservicesaustralia.com. A waypoint is a geographical location used to define a point on a flight path. In aviation, flight paths are referred to by those waypoint names, which typically take the form of a 5-letter capitalised word. For example, where a portion of an arrival flight path starts or a departure flight path ends. Some community members may be more familiar with their waypoint names, but in this phase of engagement, the flight paths are referred to by the direction planes are flying to or from. This is to be more accessible to a range of audiences. The runway aligned long approaches are the primary approaches at Brisbane Airport. They follow an instrument landing system, which is a navigation aid that helps pilots align with the runway, maintain the correct descent angle and land safely even in poor weather or low visibility. The shorter approaches are called Required Navigation Performance Authorization Required, or RNPAR, can only be flown by aircraft equipped and with advanced navigation equipment and a certified crew. In 2024, the current RNPAR arrival from the north, as shown here, was used by approximately 8% of all flights arriving overland to the new runway. This image you're looking at here illustrates both the long and short arrival flight paths overland to both of Brisbane's runways. Brisbane Airport connects to many destinations to the north and west, which means several flight paths pass over northern and western suburbs. These paths are used at different times depending on the time of day and the prevailing winds. When planes arrive from the north and west, there are points where multiple arrival routes overlap. In our 2024 engagement, we shared early concepts to show how this might be achieved. The clear feedback was received that those ideas didn't go far enough. Communities asked for more significant changes with greater spacing between arrival paths to better distribute noise. Currently, most aircraft arrive via the long straight-in approaches, which concentrates noise over the same areas. Many of these communities also experience departures when the wind direction changes, meaning they're impacted by both arrival and departure paths. The preferred options propose to reduce the concentration of arrivals and departures over the same communities by spreading operations more widely, add short approach segments to all arrival paths to allow better sharing of traffic, and increase the altitude of arriving aircraft where possible, reducing noise on the ground. We'll explore each of these proposals in more detail over the next 2 slides. In August 2024, we shared concepts to offset departure paths from the new runway immediately after takeoff when the winds are from the south. The goal was to reduce the number of flights over communities already affected by straight-in arrivals to the same runway when the winds are from the north. These arrival paths can't be moved, so we looked at shifting departures instead. And here's what we heard from the community. Many residents supported offsetting the initial departure path to reduce flight concentration in runway-aligned suburbs, but some felt that the proposed offset didn't go far enough to meaningfully reduce noise, and others were concerned that aircraft would cross over residential areas sooner after takeoff than they do now. So in response, we explored ways to increase the separation between departure and arrival paths. One option was to have departing aircraft fly straight over industrial land to the Brisbane River and then turn earlier than the current alignment. However, every variation studied would have sent aircraft over far more densely populated inner city areas, increasing the total number of people affected. It's important to acknowledge that Brisbane's future growth corridors, including new residential developments, add complexity to flight path planning. While wider sharing may require flying over new or different areas, a key principle of the Noise Action Plan for Brisbane is still to minimise the number of people impacted overall. So the concept of offsetting departure paths from arrival routes is still being actively investigated. We're continuing technical review to explore what's possible. Looking at the later sections of the departure paths, the concept we shared in 2024 included an earlier split of northbound and westbound departures with the goal of reducing flight concentration after aircraft begin turning inland. Here's what we heard from the community. He said splitting the paths earlier wouldn't significantly reduce disruption for some of the most heavily impacted areas under these routes. However, creating more separation between departure and arrival paths would deliver clearer noise improvements for communities affected by concentrated operations. The preferred option now includes a few important refinements. A small shift in the departure path to avoid communities in line with the proposals from Phase 2 of the Noise Action Plan for Brisbane, a slightly earlier split of the north and westbound departure tracks, a realignment of the later sections of both routes to reduce the numbers of people overflown, and a change to the westbound departure path to improve separation between the new proposed arrival paths used when the winds are from the north. And we'll show you how they align when we talk about those arrival path adjustments. These adjustments would apply to nighttime departures from the legacy runway as well, and you can find full details in Fact Sheet 1.1, Departures over land to the north and west. This preferred option proposes changes to arrival paths over land from the north and west, used during both day and night when winds are from the north. It builds on the earlier concepts we shared and reflects community feedback, particularly around the need to increase separation between arrival paths and raise aircraft altitude to reduce noise impacts on communities below. Here's what we're proposing. The 3 arrival routes from the north and west are now more widely spaced, helping to reduce noise concentration over any one area. An aircraft will also fly higher at altitudes as they descend towards final approach, which means less noise on the ground. The separation allows planes to descend continuously and independently using quieter glide approaches rather than step descents. To help achieve the necessary spacing, the northeast path has been shifted slightly east. Whilst this shift means overflying more people, it is at higher altitudes with fewer aircraft compared to the more heavily used north path. We acknowledge that wider spacing shares noise across a broader area, which may increase the number of people who hear aircraft, but the aim is to reduce the frequency and concentration of overflights on the same communities, a core principle of the Noise Action Plan for Brisbane. These changes cover the arrival paths up to the point where they converge. From there, the turn onto final approach for landing is addressed in the independent parallel runway operation changes, which we'll cover separately. This redesign also creates room between the northwest and north arrival flight paths for the overland departure path to the west when winds shift, reducing the number of people exposed to both arrivals and departures. We're also adding more short approach options for suitably certified aircraft with advanced navigation systems. In August 2024, we consulted the community on shifting some non-jet aircraft from the longer approaches to the shorter approaches, aiming to better distribute arrivals and reduce noise concentration. The feedback showed support for the new short paths from the northwest and northeast, though some did raise concerns about added noise over areas already impacted by the current short approaches. The preferred option adds the short arrival paths from the northwest and northeast for suitably equipped aircraft and updates the north path to help ease pressure on the longer approaches during the day. This enables more flights to use the shorter approaches and helps to better share traffic between the long and short approaches and helping to reduce build-up of noise on the longer approaches. You can find full details in the Fact Sheet 1.2, Arrivals over land from the north and west. Some of the busiest flight paths in and out of Brisbane Airport are those connecting to Sydney and Melbourne, which mean aircraft frequently travel to and from the south and east. As a result, several southern suburbs, including Rochdale, Underwood, Woodridge, Springwood, Slacks Creek, Daisy Hill and Shayla Park, experience a high volume of overflight, often with concentrated traffic along the same paths. To help reduce that frequency, we're proposing to shift south-eastbound departures away from the main southern departure path as early as it is safely possible to do so. This change is designed to reduce the burden on some of the most affected communities to the south of the airport. We're also proposing to remove a departure path that currently heads east. Instead, these flights would use an existing departure path from the new runway, initially heading west and then turning over water to reach their eastern destination. Removing that eastern departure path from the legacy runway also supports changes to arrivals from the south and east over water, which have been designed to make it easier to use subprops. Subprops is the operating mode where both arrivals and departures happen over water, helping to minimise noise over residential areas. This preferred option proposes changes to the departure paths for jets taking off from the legacy runway over land to the southeast and east when winds are from the south. The aim is to move southeasterly departures away from the busy southbound flight path sooner, reducing flight concentration. Back in 2024, we shared an early concept to spread out the 3 departure paths from the legacy runway to destinations in the south and east. You told us that the flight paths weren't spread far enough to noticeably reduce noise and that shifting the busy southern path further west would have brought aircraft closer to the legacy runway arrivals and the communities already affected by those flights. Based on that feedback, this preferred option keeps the main southbound departure flight path in its current position, but moves the southeast departure path eastward as early as it is safely possible to do so, avoiding overflight of Capalaba and routing through lower populated areas between Shelwood and Springwood. In addition, we're proposing to remove the current eastern departure path from the legacy runway. Instead, these eastbound paths would depart using the existing route from the new runway, allowing them to climb continuously after takeoff rather than levelling off at lower altitudes to remain below arrival paths coming in from the south over water. This change reduces the frequency of overflights to the south and east and also provides a shorter and more efficient routing for aircraft heading north and east. Most importantly, this change helps enable the proposed changes to arrival routes from the south over water, which supports changes that allow for greater use of simultaneous opposite direction parallel runway operations, or SOPROPs. We'll cover this on the next slide. The change to this departure route to the east would apply to both day and night, although at night it would depart from the legacy runway. You can find full details in fact sheet 2.1, departures overland to the south and east. This preferred option focuses on the arrival flight paths over water from the south and east, used when winds are from the south. While many residents have supported doing more to maximise use of SOPROPs, some in bayside suburbs have raised concerns about aircraft flying back over land. However, expanding the use of SOPROPs is a key commitment of the Noise Action Plan for Brisbane while mitigating impacts on bayside communities. Currently, there are two sets of arrival flight paths from the south and east. One of those sets is used during SOPROPs and one used in standard parallel runway operations. This proposal is to combine these into a single set of arrival flight paths. Doing so would simplify the transition into and out of SOPROPs to make the most use of this mode when conditions are suitable. To support this, we're proposing to realign the arrival flight paths further east, which would reduce overflight of more populated mainland areas of the Redlands. These longer flight paths also allow aircraft to stay higher over land and helping to reduce noise impacts. By using the same flight paths for both SOPROPs and standard operations, air traffic control would be able to transition into the mode more quickly when conditions allow and remain in it for longer. The proposed realignment would also improve separation between arrival and departure flight paths over Moreton Bay. Some shorter arrival paths would need minor adjustment due to interaction with the revised longer approaches, though it's worth noting that these shorter flight paths are not used at night or during SOPROPs, and you can find more detail on this in our fact sheet 2.2, arrivals over water from the south and east. Independent parallel runway operations, or IPRO, is a mode where each runway operates independently, allowing flights to land simultaneously on both runways. This means that arrivals to and departures from one runway are not affected by what's happening on the other. Brisbane Airport's government-approved major development plan for the new runway included the use of independent parallel runway operations to help manage future growth in traffic. It is a high-capacity mode that enables more planes to land more quickly during peak periods. Because it is part of the approved design, Airservices Australia is required to provide this capability and operate in this mode when needed. To support this, changes are proposed to the flight paths before aircraft join the final long approach. These adjustments give aircraft more time and more distance to stabilise before beginning their descent onto the ILS. The goal of these changes are to improve safety by giving aircraft a more stable descent, especially in poor weather, increase efficiency during busy periods by enabling simultaneous landings on both runways, and to reduce noise impacts by designing paths to pass over less populated areas or over water wherever possible. The proposed changes affecting each runway end are explained on the next two slides. This proposal outlines changes to arrival flight paths over land to both the new and legacy runways when winds are from the north. In August 2024, we engaged the community on an early concept that closely resembles the preferred option now being presented. These changes are essential to support independent parallel runway operations, enabling planes to land side by side to both runways at the same time. This mode will be used during busy periods in the daytime only. The adjustments aim to improve the turn angles for arriving aircraft, ensuring that planes can reliably stay on the track and join the final approach at the right point. They also allow aircraft more time to stabilise on their approach before beginning their descent to land. This remains in line with international regulatory standards for parallel runway operations. It's important to note that no changes are being made to the final runway aligned long approach, known as the ILS, for either runway, and the short approaches would still be in place for daytime use as well. The proposed adjustments apply to the segments of the arrival flight paths just before the planes join the ILS. For flights arriving from the northwest, north and northeast, a slightly longer turn is proposed onto the longer approach. These paths also connect to the legacy runway at night. For arrivals from the southwest, south and southeast and east, a longer and shallower turn onto final approach is needed. This change shifts the flight paths away from suburbs like Forestdale, Hillcrest and Regent's Park and flies over less densely populated areas. These paths, like today, they would be used during both day and night, but independent parallel runway operations would only operate during busy daytime periods. You can find more details in the fact sheet 3.1, Arrivals over land for independent parallel runway operations. In August 2024, we engaged the community on a concept to adjust the long approach arrival flight paths over water to the new runway, which currently pass over communities to the southern part of Bribie Island. That concept proposed two options. One was to shift the flight paths slightly further south over the water and slightly higher while crossing over land. The other was to move them further north over less populated areas to better avoid the more densely settled southern parts of the island, similar to the nighttime options we shared in late 2023. Residents showed strong support for shifting the flight paths further north, and based on that feedback, the preferred option proposes to realign the arrival paths north over the less populated part of Bribie Island before turning south over water to join the long approach to the new runway. This adjustment is expected to reduce noise impacts on residential areas and on the southern part of Bribie Island, where aircraft are currently lower and more noticeable. Though this change would result in aircraft overflying other communities north and inland of Bribie Island, they would be doing so at higher altitudes, which helps to reduce the impact of noise. The preferred option for arrivals over water from the north and west also includes additional short approaches. This would allow more aircraft to take the shorter arrival flight paths, improving the distribution of flights across multiple paths and reducing concentration on the long approach. And although it's not part of arrival operations, in this section we're also proposing to shift some of the non-jet departures from the new runway slightly further east, moving them away from residential areas on the Redcliffe Peninsula when winds are from the north. Although it wasn't part of the original August 2024 concept that we shared, a new option was developed in response to the community feedback, seeking relief from non-jet departure noise over the Redcliffe Peninsula. Residents in that region said that non-jet noise impacts them more than jet noise, so it prompted a proposal to shift these flights slightly east over water. This is as far east as we can safely position the route owing to interaction with other flight paths. You can find more detail on both the changes to the arrivals from the north and west and to this departure flight path change, both together in fact sheet 3.2, Arrivals over water from the north and west. In August 2024, we engaged on an initial concept to change the nighttime departure flight paths over land from the legacy runway, specifically for aircraft heading to the north and west. The idea was to direct these departures over different areas in the daytime paths by having planes fly straight ahead for longer before turning. Earlier engagement phases also explored options to reduce impact of overland nighttime departures on residential communities. Many residents supported efforts to reduce nighttime noise for areas already affected by daytime operations. However, some raised concerns about shifting noise onto runway-aligned suburbs that already experience both nighttime arrivals and daytime departures. There were also strong calls to direct all nighttime departures over water, which is the current practice when winds are from the north. Back in 2023, Airservices proposed a nighttime departure path that would turn aircraft early after takeoff from the legacy runway, circling over airport and industrial land before climbing over water. That option received mixed feedback. Some residents supported turning planes away from runway-aligned communities. Others, particularly to the south of the airport, were concerned about being newly overflown at low altitude at night. Because the new runway is located 2 kilometres further northwest than the legacy runway, it provides greater distance from communities to the south and southeast. So if we apply the early turn concept from the new runway instead of from the legacy runway, departing aircraft could avoid tracking directly over those residential suburbs while still offering relief to communities currently impacted by legacy runway night operations. In this scenario, aircraft would make a tight left turn immediately after takeoff from the new runway at night, flying over airport and industrial land before heading out over Moreton Bay to complete their climb over water. Once over the water and at higher altitude, planes would connect with their onward flight path. This adjustment would significantly reduce the numbers of runway-aligned population impacted by nighttime departures and allow the flight path to also stay west of Wynnum away from homes. Given past concerns about early turn departures, we partnered with airlines to test how accurately different aircraft types could follow this new flight path. We looked at a multitude of aircraft types: A320, A330, A350, A380, Boeing 737 and Boeing 777. In all simulations, aircraft remained on or inside the early turn flight path centerline until reaching the water. While minor variations may occur due to occasional weather or aircraft performance, these results showed the proposed path from the new runway should be consistently followed. Since the new runway opened in 2020, a noise abatement procedure has been in place that prevents overland operations at night from the new runway. However, the procedure allows use of the new runway at night when the legacy runway is closed for essential maintenance or during emergencies. So we're proposing to trial this option during planned legacy runway maintenance works in mid-2026. That trial will help us assess real-world performance, measure any noise benefits and gauge community support. This new option, it would only be used when sod props is not available and winds are from the south. During northerly winds, departures would continue to operate over water as they do today, and sod props would remain the preferred nighttime operating mode. More detail on this proposal is available in Fact Sheet 4, Departures over Land at Night. So to recap the proposed changes presented in this engagement, we've grouped the change options into 4 main areas, each focused on a specific region of Brisbane or an operational objective. The first group is changes to the north and west. That covers departures over land to the north and west and arrivals over land from the north and west. The second set focuses on the south and east. That's departures over land to the south and east and arrivals over water from the south and east. The third group relates mainly to changes supporting independent parallel runway operations. That's arrivals over land for independent parallel approaches and arrivals over water from the north and the west. Then finally, a new option currently under consideration. It's not a preferred option at this time. It's for nighttime departures over land. And this concept is being proposed for a trial during planned maintenance in 2026 to test how well it can be used in practice and whether it offers a meaningful noise benefit. So altogether, this is the full set of flight path changes being presented in this phase of engagement. It's been shaped by previous feedback, technical analysis, and a continued focus on reducing the noise impact of aircraft operations wherever possible. So a big thank you for us for taking the time to watch this presentation. We really would appreciate your feedback on the proposed flight path changes. Please make sure to have your say by the 17th of August 2025. You can provide feedback through the online survey, by email or by mail, and all the details are on this slide here. If you have specific concerns or want to learn more about aircraft activity in your area, we've also included links here for making a formal noise complaint about a specific flight and for accessing general information. And if you haven't already, you can subscribe online to stay updated as the noise action plan for Brisbane progresses.